Ace's death quite literally shook the One Piece world. But what if he was reborn with all his memories and powers? How strong will Ace become if he were still alive, and how would this affect the entire timeline? The chaos of Marineford was burned into Ace's mind. Everything was burning. There was the smell of blood in the air, and the ground shook like earthquakes. It was the blood of his family, the people who had been with him, and who he had put in this situation. And then there was his younger brother, Luffy. Luffy shouldn't be here. He wasn't strong enough yet, and he shouldn't be risking his life like this. Whitebeard's presence was still a wall between him and death, but even that wall was starting to crumble. Each second felt heavy, and as Luffy came close and freed Ace from his shackles, the brother came down like a meteor. He wasn't going to let anyone else get hurt, but he had no time to worry. The attacks came from every side, some close enough that he could feel the heat of them against his skin. He saw Luffy running, fighting, bleeding, refusing to stop. A brother's stubbornness. It was both touching and exhausting. Why did he have to fall into Sakazuki's provocations? He was clearly not strong enough right now, and yet he was throwing all of this away, getting into a fight with an admiral. But there wasn't any time to think. The moment came when Sakazuki's molten fist broke through the chaos, aimed for Luffy. Ace didn't think at all, and his body moved on its own. The next thing he felt was the heat of the magma burning through him before the pain even registered. It was sharp at first, then overwhelming. His chest felt hollow, and the sound of battle faded under the rush of blood. He didn't have a heartbeat anymore. Falling felt strange, and it felt like all his decisions up to this point were piling onto him. He thought about the people he'd met, the choices he'd made, the weight of his father's name, losing Sabo. His last clear thought was that he hoped Luffy would keep going, that he would regret not seeing Luffy fulfill his dream, and a thank you for loving someone like him. He told Luffy all of that as everything went black. When light returned, it wasn't the blinding glare of Marineford's battlefield. It was softer, warmer, and strangely close. His eyes opened to a ceiling he didn't recognize, and his body felt really small, weak. His hands, when he lifted them, were tiny. There were voices around him, speaking in tones meant for a newborn. The shock didn't hit all at once. His mind processed it piece by piece. The way the world towered over him, the inability to speak, the strange comfort of being held. He was alive. Not just alive, he was a baby. It was absurd, it was impossible, but it was also real. The memory of magma and pain still lingered in his mind. Yet here he was, blinking at a new world. Ace couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry. Instead, he just stared, thinking about what was happening. The time seemed to go by quicker, and he cherished the short time he had just looking at his mother. She wasn't going to survive this, and Ace couldn't form any words for her. But it was nice to recognize the mother he had never met, even when he couldn't see too well. As he passed from one person to another, he was finally taken by Garp, who placed him in the care of Curly Dedan. He was so glad to look at her again that he couldn't help but bawl his eyes out. But Ace realized that he still had his powers. He was alone when he tested it, but yes, he still had his flames, the power of the Mera Mera no Mi, and he still had his haki. He knew that he had to hide all of this and come up with a story when he learned how to walk. No one could know about his rebirth, not even the brothers he hadn't met yet. If word got out that a baby could use haki or summon fire, the wrong people would come looking, and Ace wasn't going to let that happen. The first years were painfully slow. He was trapped in a body that couldn't even walk, let alone fight. When he finally learned to stand, he would wobble into the trees, pretending to play while actually testing his balance for quick steps and dodges. By the time he could run, he was already weaving between trees and vaulting over logs in the forest outside Mount Kalubo. He learned to hide his flames and kept working on them, bent on getting stronger with his powers. But the main thing was his haki. He needed to refine it before anything else. Ace went to meet Sabo, reenacting everything he had done in his previous life to get back his brother. He had tears in his eyes when he met him, but he promised not to let his brother die this time. He had no idea Sabo had been alive during his original life. Ace couldn't tell him the truth about his past life, but he could teach him everything else to make Sabo stronger. He started with the basics: stance, balance, how to read movement. Then came the real tests: how to take a hit, how to strike without wasting energy, how to use haki. Sabo struggled at first, but Ace was patient. The first time Sabo's fist turned hard with armament haki, Ace almost laughed out loud. Luffy came later though, but this time Ace didn't push him away. He instantly hugged Luffy when he came and took him in as his brother. So Ace taught Luffy too, just enough so that Luffy could develop the core skills for haki. Everything else would come later. Ace kept pushing himself as well. He tested the limits of his devil fruit, making the flames hotter, denser, faster. He learned to control the size of his fire so precisely that he could light a single leaf without burning the rest of the tree. The more he practiced, the bluer the flames became. Blue fire was hotter, faster, and far more dangerous. The turning point came the day Sabo should have died. Ace had known it was coming. This time, he made sure to be there. The noble's ship loomed ahead, and he had a tough time trying to find where Sabo was. But he spotted the tiny ship. Right as the world noble fired, Ace went there like a firebolt and caught Sabo before he could get hurt. But there was someone else there too, a much older man who'd quickly taken them to a safer spot. Both of them, the two boys, were shocked to see the man who introduced himself as Dragon. Sabo lived and with minimal injuries, but Dragon was impressed that the two boys managed to survive and offered them both a place in the Revolutionary Army. Ace declined, but told Sabo that he should go if he wanted to be free. Eventually, Sabo agreed and left with Dragon as Ace went back. With Sabo safe and training under Dragon's people, Ace had time to focus on Luffy. He told told Luffy that Sabo was still alive and where he'd gone, but told him that it would be a while until they could meet again. He pushed him harder, making him run longer distances, spar faster, and train under tougher conditions. Years passed like that. Ace grew taller, faster, and more powerful than ever before. His haki was sharper, his flames hotter, and his instincts quicker. He could coat his entire body in armament without effort, and his observation could sense movement far beyond the tree line. His previous strengths had been honed, and now he finally had his body back and in peak condition. At 17, Ace was ready to go. He left Mount Kaluba with a grin and a plan. The seas wouldn't catch him off guard this time. He'd hunt down Blackbeard before the man even had the chance to betray anyone. He'd find strong allies, gather information, and be ready for whatever the world threw at him. Sabo and Luffy stood on their own paths now, but Ace had shaped those paths in ways that made him proud. Sabo's haki was refined and sharp, his fighting style efficient, and he was sure that Luffy would be able to hold his own against opponents far beyond what a rookie captain should be able to handle when he made his eventual journey. As Ace's ship cut through the waves, he tested his flames one more time. The fire burned bright, shifting from orange to deep blue, and the heat shimmered in the air. Even the sea seemed to flinch back. It was a reminder that this time he was stronger. Ace's first weeks at sea were smooth. The East Blue was calm compared to the New World, he remembered, and there wasn't much that would pose a threat to him. Despite this, there was a lot he had to do, and he started off by following his old path. Soon enough, that led him to his former comrade and first mate, Masked Deuce. The man had recently been stranded on the same island that Ace had originally found the Mera Mera no Mi, but he wouldn't leave his old friend hanging. When Deuce recovered, they left together. Deuce wasn't a fighter yet, but Ace trained him on the basics of survival. In return, Deuce kept the logbooks, mapped their routes, and wrote down every strange encounter they had. It didn't take long for Ace to grow bored of the calmer seas. He knew where he needed to go. The New World. That was where the strongest pirates lived, and where his mission against Blackbeard would eventually lead. Their first encounter with the chaos of the New World was almost laughable. A massive sea king tried to swallow their ship whole, but Ace's flames split the waves, sending the beast fleeing. Deuce was left staring at the scorched sea, muttering about how it wasn't normal to be that strong. Word spread quickly. A young pirate with fire hot enough to burn the ocean's surface and haki sharp enough to sink small crews wasn't someone people ignored. And when Whitebeard's name came up, Ace knew it was time to make his move. Whitebeard's ship was massive, like a floating fortress. Ace didn't challenge him outright. He'd already learned that in this timeline, rushing in wasn't the smartest move. Instead, he came with respect and an offer, service in exchange for guidance. His loyalty to Whitebeard was still at its peak, since this was the man who gave his life to save him before, and now Ace would repay the favor. He wouldn't let his father down. Whitebeard was amused, but cautious. Still, he let Ace aboard, giving him time to prove himself. In the battles that followed, Ace's strength and determination stood out. He fought like someone with nothing to lose but everything to protect. It wasn't long before Whitebeard agreed to train him personally, focusing on something Ace had only scratched the surface of before: advanced conqueror's haki. The training was brutal. Controlling the raw willpower of a king wasn't about shouting the loudest or hitting the hardest. It was about precision. It was about striking without touching and exploding something from the inside with sheer will. Whitebeard's lessons were simple, but the discipline they required was immense. After months aboard, Ace had finally mastered the technique and asked to travel for a bit. He'd already become a commander due to his strength, and there were things he needed to do before taking down Blackbeard. He remembered the place well enough to know it would be dangerous, but he was going at a time when Kaido wasn't there. Wano was as closed off as ever, but Ace found his way in. He didn't come to cause trouble, only to see an old friend. That friend was Yamato. In his first life, they had met under strange circumstances, but here, Ace found him with the same explosive cuffs, and they befriended each other by fighting once again before having sake. Ace asked Yamato to come with him, but Yamato told him that the cuffs on him wouldn't let him. But Ace had trained for this moment. He grabbed the cuffs and caused them to shatter, using his advanced conqueror's haki, and in an instant, Yamato was finally free. They defiled Kaido's statue. Before leaving Wano, knowing they'd have time to go there again once they were even stronger. When they returned to Whitebeard's ship, Yamato was a burst of energy among the crew. He clashed with others often, and Whitebeard welcomed him on board. Every step brought him closer to the moment he'd been preparing for, the day he'd confront Blackbeard before betrayal could ever happen. And soon, that day would come. One day, news spread across the ship that Thatch had found a devil fruit, the Yami Yami no Mi. To most, it was just another rare fruit. To Ace, it was a warning siren. He already knew what it was capable of, and more importantly, he knew who would want it. He went to Whitebeard immediately, explaining that Teach, one of their own, was dangerous. Whitebeard didn't believe Teach would ever harm family. It wasn't in his nature to suspect betrayal without proof. Ace didn't press too hard, but instead said that he'd give the evidence if Whitebeard trusted him. He joined Thatch's crew for a bit and told Thatch to be cautious as well without giving anything away. Thatch laughed it off, but promised to be alert. Days passed without incident, but Ace stayed watchful. Then, one quiet evening, the signs appeared. Teach moving in the shadows, his presence heavy with intent. Ace didn't wait for the strike. He stepped into the path before Teach could lunge at Thatch and lit up the air with his flames. And then the fight began. Teach tried to play it off, but Ace calling him out threw the villain off guard. Teach didn't understand how Ace could know what he was thinking, but Ace's fury struck him before he could escape. It wasn't an even fight. Ace had prepared for this moment for years, and it showed. His haki struck through Teach's guard again and again, every blow landing with the weight of both strength and intent. Teach's tricks couldn't keep up. Thatch stood back, stunned by the speed of it. Whitebeard arrived soon after, towering over the scene. By then, Teach was bloodied and pinned, his plan shattered. Whitebeard's eyes hardened when he saw the truth for himself. Without a word, he ordered Teach locked up deep within the ship, guarded day and night. The crew was shaken, but Ace felt a quiet satisfaction. This time, there would be no betrayal, no chain of events leading to Marineford. The future had already shifted. With Teach locked away, the crew's mood slowly returned to normal. Thatch, grateful for Ace's quick action, had no interest in keeping the Yami Yami no Mi. He said it didn't suit him and pressed it into Ace's hands. Ace looked at the fruit and knew instantly who it was meant for. The Yami Yami no Mi wasn't just powerful, it was a dangerous weapon that could erase a devil fruit user's advantage entirely. Giving it to someone he trusted completely was the only safe option. That meant Sabo. Ace made the trip himself. He found Sabo with the Revolutionary Army, older and sharper than the boy he'd trained years ago. Sabo didn't hesitate when Ace handed over the fruit. He bit into it without complaint, his face twisting at the taste, and then the change began. The darkness answered to him instantly, swirling and pulling with a strange, heavy force. Ace could see the way Sabo's mind worked, already figuring out how to combine the power with his own fighting style. With haki, it would be deadly. Ace stayed a few days, sparring with him, helping him understand the fruit's limits and dangers. By the time Ace left, Sabo had gotten pretty good with his new power. Meanwhile, Luffy had already set sail. Ace followed his journey from a distance, letting him fight his own battles. When the Straw Hats reached Alabasta, Ace arrived just long enough to help keep certain threats from escalating. He didn't step in to take over since this was Luffy's story after all, but he cleared away a few enemies that would have slowed his brother down unnecessarily. After Alabasta, Ace slipped away quietly, returning to his own adventures. The seas were still wide open, and his mission was far from over. Now, with Sabo holding the Yami Yami no Mi and Luffy carving his own path, Ace felt the pieces falling into place. He was stronger than ever, but more importantly, so were his brothers. Whatever came next, they wouldn't face it unprepared. By now, Ace's control over the Mera Mera no Mi had gone beyond anything he'd achieved in his previous life. Whitebeard was in far better shape than Ace remembered from before. With Thatch alive and cooking proper meals, the old man's strength held steady. He still carried the weight of years, but his body wasn't failing him as quickly, and Whitebeard didn't hold Ace back. While Ace roamed the seas, other events played out. Luffy's journey reached Sabaudi, where he and his crew faced the chaos of the Celestial Dragons, the Pacifistas, and Kizaru. This time, the separation at the archipelago was no less sudden, but the pieces fell differently afterward. Luffy was sent to Amazon Lily. Rayleigh found him soon after, and instead of chasing after his crew immediately, Luffy agreed to train. Rayleigh taught him the depths of haki, pushing him to refine every aspect of his ability. Luffy's progress was fast, and by the end of the 2 years, he'd gotten exceptionally stronger, something that Ace had never gotten to see before. Ace himself had become renowned all across the seas as the second coming of Whitebeard. He was being compared to other emperors of the sea, and was considered a massive threat. Even Shanks recognized his potential. When the 2 years passed, the three brothers were no longer scattered by chance. They were spread out by choice, each carrying their own roles. Sabo crossed paths with Luffy on Dressrosa, where the Yami Yami no Mi's power left an unmistakable impression. For Ace, every step forward meant the old future was fading. Blackbeard's rise had been cut short before it began, and his family was stronger than ever. The seas were changing, but this time Ace was changing with them. The years of separate journeys led to an inevitable meeting point: Wano. Luffy's alliance with the samurai was already in motion by the time Ace arrived. This time, however, he wasn't alone. Marco had joined him, bringing the strength of the Whitebeard pirates. Yamato was there too, carrying the same stubborn will to see Kaido fall. Masked Deuce sailed in at Ace's side, now much stronger than before and with his own crew. Whitebeard didn't want a war with the Beast Pirates, but Ace promised that he wouldn't drag everyone in. He wanted to liberate Wano by any means, and Whitebeard trusted him to do it. Wano's air was thick with tension. The rebellion was a quiet storm waiting to break. The people had been crushed for too long under Kaido and Orochi, and Ace could see the hunger for freedom in their eyes. Ace moved through the rebel forces like a spark through dry grass, helping train them, sharpening their skills, and making sure their morale stayed high. Yamato fought alongside him, matching his pace in every drill, while Marco acted as both a shield and a healer for the troops. The night before the raid on Onigashima, the skies above Wano felt heavy, as if the island knew what was coming. The plan was tight. Luffy and his crew would lead the charge, Ace and his group would cut through key defenses, and the samurai would surge in behind them. When the attack began, chaos unfolded. Ace's blue fire ripped across the battlefield, clearing paths through enemies. Marco soared above, smashing foes aside with talons wrapped in haki. Yamato leapt along, swinging his club with bone-cracking force. Inside Onigashima, the corridors became a maze of enemies. Law worked with Ace, using his room to teleport him into strategic positions where his flames could sweep through the largest clusters of foes. Ace's fire moved like it was alive, bending around allies, driving enemies into retreat. And then they went to face both Big Mom and Kaido atop Onigashima's skull dome. The two emperors seemed fearsome, but with Ace standing with Luffy, Zoro, Kid, and Law, things seemed to be in the pirates' favor. Big Mom was dragged away from the battle by Law and Ace while the others dealt with Kaido. Big Mom's raw durability made her a nightmare opponent. Each strike Ace landed seemed to sink into her without slowing her down. She hurled her homies with frightening speed, forcing him to weave between incoming strikes. At one point, Prometheus's flames collided with Ace's, the impact exploding in a blinding flare that lit up the entire floor. But Ace's advantage was his awakened fruit. He could turn the ground beneath Big Mom into blazing embers, heating the air around her until her skin began to burn. His flames shifted from blue to a pale, almost white core, focused through his haki into cutting arcs. One slash of fire sent her crashing into a wall, molten rock dripping around her. When she tried to smother his flames with the Napoleon's blade, Ace used his fire like a shield, coating it in armament and clashing directly with her strikes. Law appeared behind her in a burst of air, cutting through her defenses with shambles-assisted slashes. Together, they wore her down, forcing her to be on the defensive. Meanwhile, Luffy battled with Kaido. The fight was massive, with so many people having gone up against Kaido, but the beast seemed unstoppable. Kaido had put down both Zoro and Kid, and Luffy was the only one who was left standing. Meanwhile, Ace finally finished his fight with Big Mom when he heard the massive boom that echoed. Fearing the worst, he rushed toward Luffy's battle and found his brother buried in the ground. Ace stepped between them. Kaido's laugh rolled like thunder. He lunged, his massive head swinging down in a crushing blow. Ace met it head-on, coating his fist in flames and Conqueror's haki, the impact sending shockwaves that rattled the entire island. The fight became a blur of movement and heat. Ace darted across the rooftop, avoiding the crushing sweeps of Kaido's Kanabo, countering each with fire-laced strikes. Kaido's Kanabo swung down, black lightning from his own Conqueror's haki colliding with Ace's blazing guard. Each clash cracked the air, the force of it throwing tiles and rubble into the sky. Ace pressed harder, striking not just with fire, but with intent. Each blow aimed to test Kaido's endurance. Marco arrived briefly, diving in to keep Kaido from getting a clean hit, while Yamato hammered his father with blows that made the rooftop tremble. But even with all three pressing the attack, Kaido refused to fall. The turning point came when Luffy stirred. His body glowed with a strange, impossible energy, his heartbeat pulsing in a rhythm Ace had never felt before. Gear 5 burst into life. The rooftop changed instantly. Luffy rose up, and he was wrapped in power Ace had never felt before from his brother. Ace and the others were already tired from their battles, but now they could see hope. Ace grinned and adjusted his pace, syncing his attacks with Luffy's flow. When Luffy stretched to pull Kaido off balance, Ace's flames would crash into the opening, searing scales and muscle. When Kaido roared and swung back, Luffy's ridiculous elasticity kept him clear, while Ace punished every missed strike. Together, they drove Kaido into the ground, forcing him into his dragon form. Luffy took care of the rest. His final blow was an extremely huge punch that dwarfed even Kaido and sent him crashing into the earth below, the impact shaking the whole of Onigashima. Silence fell for a heartbeat. Then the cheers began. The beast pirates were broken. The rebellion had won, and Wano was free. Ace stood among the wreckage, flames fading from his hands. Knowing that this victory was more than just a battle won, it was proof that the future had truly changed. Wano was at last free. The land had been liberated, and the world recognized the shift in power. The new emperors of the sea were clear. Shanks, Whitebeard, and now Luffy stood among the greatest. Ace watched from the deck, fire crackling in his palm with pride. He had already fulfilled his mission. Now it was time to make the world know his name. Not just the son of Roger, but a true pirate. He set sail with Luffy for a bit with his gang, and they ended up on Egghead Island. Things turned dire soon enough as they realized that the world government was coming for Vegapunk because of the secrets he knew. Soon enough, the assault on the island started, and Luffy, Ace, and their friends went in to protect the scientist. Vegapunk released the message for the world to hear before his death could be finalized. The truth of the Void Century and the world government would change the world. But the world government wasn't going to sit around, as Saint Saturn called the rest of the elders. Beings with devilish Zoan forms and regenerative abilities that made them almost unkillable. The battle was intense. The sky twisted into unnatural colors as Saint Saturn's monstrous form descended upon the island. His Ushi-Oni body crawled across the steel platforms, each step cracking the ground beneath. From the far horizon, a colossal bird-shaped shadow cut through the clouds. Marcus Mars in his Itza-Maid form, raining fire over the shore. Ace's flames roared in response, clashing with the Elder's hellish breath in midair, firestorm against firestorm, until the winds carried embers across the entire island. Luffy, meanwhile, was already in Gear 5, his rubbery body deflecting Saturn's venom-coated legs while turning the battlefield into a chaotic, cartoonish war zone. Saturn's legs cut through steel towers like paper, but Luffy's reality-bending tricks made sure to keep him at bay. Ace darted in and out of the chaos, his flames moving like living serpents, forcing Marcus Mars to keep his distance. The ground erupted again as another elder emerged, Saint Ethan Baron Nushiro, galloping in his skeletal centaur form, Shodai Kitetsu gleaming with cursed frost. He moved like lightning, blade strikes freezing entire walkways, but Zoro and Yamato met him head-on with their weapons. The sound of each clash boomed across the island like a drumbeat of war. Ace intercepted Nushiro's faster charges, throwing pillars of blue fire that melted the frozen ground before it could trap their allies. It was clear the elders had come to make sure Vegapunk would never escape, but the brothers refused to back down. The battle became a dance of fire. Rubber, steel, and hockey colliding in an endless storm. Even the pacifistas and Seraphim joined in, their weapons turning against the invaders thanks to Vegapunk's emergency override through Bonnie. But the elders were relentless. They didn't tire, didn't hesitate. With every passing minute, more of Egghead collapsed into ruin. Luffy's eyes narrowed. They couldn't win here, not with the Marines inbound, and Kizaru's light already flickering on the horizon. Ace understood. The goal wasn't to destroy the elders now, but to get Vegapunk out alive as the broadcast went on. While Luffy tangled the elders in a surreal reality warping barrage, Ace unleashed his full power, summoning a sun-like sphere of fire that engulfed half the battlefield. Ace fought alongside Luffy, blazing through the chaos with sharp bursts of blue-white flames. They protected Vegapunk and his remaining satellites as they tried to escape. The island was losing, but the mission was clear, and they were holding up pretty well. Despite the fact that Ace couldn't kill any elder, he was keeping them at bay. Then he realized something. Conqueror's Haki made their regeneration slower. With Luffy's help, they were able to let the broadcast play out, and soon enough, help from Shanks arrived in the form of Dari and Brogy. Luffy and Ace escaped along with the scattered allies, the Straw Hats, rebellious satellites, and giants from the giant warrior pirates. But the danger wasn't over. Across the seas, Emu regained footing, plotting next moves. Their next stop was Elbaf, and Ace planned on leaving after the visit. But things quickly took a turn for the worse. There, Emu and the God's Knights struck. Taking over Gunko's body, Emu revealed terrifying strength, wielding Conqueror's Haki that knocked out giants with sheer force and abilities that felt like magic. Emu transformed giants like Dory and Brogy into immortal demon kings. The battle on Elbaf was like no other. Ace sprayed arcs of flame, searing through demonic limbs and shielding Luffy from crushing blows. He chased back wave after wave of twisted giants, forging paths through their ranks so that Luffy and Loki could reach Emu. This wasn't like Egghead. Here, the brothers had room to unleash themselves without restraint. Ace's flames turned white hot, superheating the very air until even Elbaf's snow-capped peaks began to melt. Luffy's reality-bending power twisted Emu's own attacks into harmless shapes, bouncing spears into clouds or turning shadow blades into rubbery knots. Loki's raw strength crushed the ground beneath him, each strike forcing Emu to shift focus. Still, Emu was not to be underestimated. A wave of black energy swept across the field, dimming Ace's flames and throwing Luffy back. Loki barely blocked a strike that would have split the island in half. The battle was brutal, each side trading blows that could level nations. And this wasn't even Emu's true form. He was merely displaying the power he could in Gunko's body. But eventually, the two brothers and their crews were able to push back the God's Knights, and for the first time in centuries, Emu stepped back. Surrounded by fire that burned through shadows, rubber that refused to break, and the unyielding force of Elbaf's mightiest warrior, the ruler of the world saw no victory here. With a final, echoing gaze that promised retribution, Emu dissolved into darkness and retreated into the horizon to take care of the chaos back at Mary Joaz. It seemed that the revolutionary army was doing a number there. Ace, Luffy, and Loki stood together, battered, burning, but unbroken. The battlefield fell quiet, save for the hiss of cooling flames and the deep breaths of warriors who knew this was only the beginning. Ace, Luffy, and Loki stood together, their eyes turned toward the seas. The war with the world government was now inevitable, and they were ready. They knew this was a turning point. Emu had shown frightening power, the ability to destroy islands, to transform allies into demons, to create weapons out of nothing. But now, the world was fighting back. The broadcast seemed to have made most places rebel, and the revolutionary army was taking full advantage of the situation. Ace realized that Sabo would be out on the front lines, and so he told Luffy it was time that they fought back. The world had changed, but the world government still clung to its iron grip. Their fleets spread across the seas, mobilizing the Marines, CP0, pacifistas, and secret weapons in every corner. The broadcast had caused quite a number of Marines to defect, but the world government wasn't going to take this lying down. They had hoped that they'd be able to coerce the giants into fighting at their side, but even that had been ruined by Luffy and Ace. Things were looking dire, but the world government still commanded the largest forces the world had ever seen. The stage for the final war was set. Ace, Luffy, and Loki left Elbaf along with their allies. Marco went ahead to give word to Whitebeard and Shanks, while Robin made Morgan spread the news to the rest of the islands Luffy had saved to help with the coming war. It was all-out rebellion. Whitebeard got word, and despite his age, he prepared his forces. The Minks, Wano, Fishman Island, Alabasta, and numerous others took up arms. Sabo received word and stayed behind to join forces with his brothers. And soon enough, he saw them on the horizon as the revolutionary army continued its skirmishes against the world government. Sabo saw Ace and Luffy standing together on the deck with a massive combined fleet beside them. The Whitebeard pirates, the revolutionary army, the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, the Heart Pirates, and countless allied crews from the seas had gathered. Giants, mink warriors, and last but not least, the red-haired pirates. All the emperors had shown up and the horizon was filled with ships and banners, a chaotic but determined army united under the call for freedom. The first clash came at dawn. Cannon fire tore through the air, explosions echoing like thunder as fleets collided. Ace's flames carved through heavily armored marine ships, melting metal and clearing paths for allies to board enemy vessels. Sabo manipulated the the Yami Yami no Mi with masterful precision, pulling enemy cannons into the sea or shutting down Devil Fruit users mid-attack. Luffy led a charge straight into the Marines' main fleet, stretching, twisting, and striking with unstoppable momentum. Above, the world government unleashed their most formidable forces. Admirals and vice admirals soared through the skies, each strike capable of leveling islands. But Ace and Luffy moved in perfect synchrony, combining their Haki and Devil Fruit powers. Ace's flames melted weapons before they could fire, while Luffy's Gear 5 allowed him to counter attacks that bent reality itself. Zoro was cutting through enemies left and right. Yamato and Loki were wreaking havoc on the battlefield. Whitebeard was causing massive earthquakes. Every ally was doing their part as they were closing in on Pangaea Castle. And then Imu appeared on the battlefield, flanked by the 5 elders. Their presence alone caused the sea to churn, the air to thicken, and allied soldiers to tremble. They had appeared with the full extent of their strength this time, but the 3 brothers were ready. Together, Ace, Luffy, and Sabo surged forward, cutting through with flames, darkness, and rubber-fueled strength. Ace's white-hot fire clashed with the elders, each strike causing shockwaves that split the sky. Sabo's Yami Yami fields pulled enemies into crushing collisions with their own weapons. Luffy twisted and stretched through impossibly fast attacks, hitting weak points. The battle spread across the sea and sky. Marco's Phoenix flames healed allies and burned enemy formations. Law's room allowed him to teleport strategic blows, slicing through enemy ranks while protecting civilians and allies alike. Giants of Elbaf swung colossal weapons, smashing ships into splinters. Minks unleashed speed and ferocity, tearing apart mechanical reinforcements. Every corner of the battlefield was alive with chaos and determination. Ace faced Imu directly as the red-haired pirates took up arms against the elders. Luffy and Sabo stood beside him. Flames licked across the sky, and the heat alone forced back anyone who dared to interfere. Ace's blue-white fire burned with the fury of a life reborn, his Haki blending perfectly with his Devil Fruit to strike both physical and spiritual essence. Imu's attacks, dark and pervasive, sought to crush him instantly, but Ace danced through shadows, bending the flames into offensive and defensive forms. Luffy and Sabo fought alongside him. Gear 5 worked in tandem with the Yami Yami and Ace's flames, creating waves of energy that overwhelmed the numerous weapons Imu had summoned around themselves. The brothers' bond amplified their power, each attack instinctively timed to complement the others. The tide turned. The elders' attacks faltered under the combined might of the red-haired pirates, while the clash with Imu went long and hard. Ace's flames scorched the battlefield, while Luffy redirected and absorbed blows in Gear 5. Sabo's darkness stripped away the advantage of Devil Fruit powers and was even working on slowing Imu's regeneration. Darkness met fire, steel met rubber, Haki collided with Haki. Every strike shook the heavens, cracked the earth, and split the waves below. Ace's flame pillars merged into a massive inferno, pushing Imu to the brink. Luffy's fists expanded with reality warping power, striking with both speed and overwhelming force. Sabo manipulated gravity and darkness to unbalance the world ruler, leaving Imu no footing to launch a counterattack. Finally, Imu faltered, the first time in centuries. With a final combined strike, the brothers forced the shadow of tyranny to finally break. Imu couldn't believe it as their powers were overwhelmed. The brothers had overpowered it. Despite being on death's door themselves, they had continued to push through. And now, Imu's form was breaking. They looked at the 3, standing defiantly. It was as if Joy Boy had reincarnated. What he couldn't do alone, these 3 had done together. And the final bell was rung. The world government's iron grip was broken. Their fleets scattered, and the elders began to break as Imu's form did so as well. Imu closed their eyes and scattered into dust. The war ended with the allies victorious. The seas, once ruled by fear, now belonged to those willing to fight for freedom. Ace, Luffy, and Sabo stood side by side, the world finally acknowledging the might of the brothers who had changed history. Flames, darkness, and freedom had reshaped the future. The world would never be the same, and the 3 brothers, united by bonds stronger than life itself, had proven that even gods could be challenged and defeated. The sun rose over a new era, with Ace's flames burning bright, Luffy's laughter echoing across the seas, and Sabo's darkness silently watching over the world. The age of tyranny was over, and the age of freedom had begun. Make sure to subscribe and smash the like button for more One Piece videos.